7, where Paul says, "In your anger do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you are still angry, and do not give the devil a foothold." Now, there's one thing about that when we're in the communication segment. How people handle themselves, how they control themselves is vitally important in the communication process. And first of all, we have to recognize that we need to own our emotions. Okay? We need to own our emotions. And that means that I take responsibility when I get angry. I don't have this on here. I was going to try to get a whiteboard up here, but I forgot about it because there's a couple things I wanted to put on the whiteboard. But we can get one. You have one right there. I can bring it right up with it. Because I'll need it tomorrow.
Mike, you want to grab the one out of that classroom?
And the other text I want to look at briefly is over in verse 29 of chapter 4. Chapter 4 of Ephesians is a great book in counseling. We use it a lot. So is Philippians 4. "Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up, according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen." Now, Paul does not qualify this in the sense that as long as somebody upsets you, doesn't upset you, I should say. He's not saying, as long as nobody upsets you, then let no unwholesome word come out of your mouth. Or as long as you agree with the people that are talking, then let no unwholesome word come out of you. There's no condition. It's non-conditional. We should always be communicating to one another with the idea in mind of doing what? Building up other people. And especially leaders. You know, leaders sometimes have a big problem with anger. They have a big problem communicating because they have a tendency to let the things that are happening become personal to them. See, to a relational leader, they are not thinking in terms of what's in it for me, or how's it a threat to me, or what's in the best interest that I have here in this discussion, or what's going on. The relational leader says, what's best for you? And when you think in terms of what's best for the other, then you're going to say, I'm not going to let an unwholesome thing come out of my mouth. I'm not going to do anything unless it builds up the body. In reality, I'm convinced, and of course, one of the qualifications of an elder is to be under self-control, to have self-control. You say, how many times have you seen elders that didn't have self-control? Yeah, well, we won't get into any personalities here, but... and I'm not saying that I've always had self-control. I've had some moments, you know, and usually I've had to repent and apologize. And my wife has accepted that. But that's so vitally important in leadership. Be under control, okay? And so, the reason that's so important is because you cannot communicate well if you're not under control, and you certainly aren't going to be a good listener. You're certainly not going to be a good listener. And you can't be a good person in language if you don't listen. You can't be a good communicator if you don't listen. It's vitally important. One or the other is going to fail, and the whole thing's going to fail. If you fail as a listener, chances are your communication with the people is going to fail. Have you ever had somebody that you've been talking to, and all of a sudden they see somebody come in, they're gone, you know? Or when you're talking about something, and all of a sudden they interrupt you, start talking about something they're interested in, you see. Those kind of things have to do with self-interest, but they have nothing to do with building up somebody else. And their communication is not for that purpose. Now, for leaders and elders, they're putting in some kind of a role and kind of a work where they're supposed to be examples, and they've got to learn to communicate, to build up. I'm convinced that if a man meet all the physical qualifications and have Bible knowledge and good kids and all that, but he just can't seem to control his mouth, or he can't seem to be under control anger-wise, he has no business being an elder until he gets that under control. Here is a psychological law I'm going to give you. Ken Wilson's psychological law, so it may not have much importance to you, but anyway, I've taught our counselors on staff at Agape Counseling Center this law, and they've proven to me, and I've already proven to myself, that this law is constant and works. You know, there are certain things you learn to do in counseling that are productive and help you in your ministry or your practice or what have you. Here's one that has helped our counselors and helped me for years. Whoops, is that one kind of dry? You don't have a blue one? I like blue. But that was dead. Okay, well, let's see what we got here. All right, now, come on, let's have a contribution for markers in this congregation. We're going to pass the hat or what have you. Just like you're not having somebody put the light bulbs in, you know, you got to have somebody. There he goes. That's right, embarrassed him now. He brought one up here. 3 of them. All blue.
They're all burnt out.
Are you saying I'm not building you up right? Look at that thing. Okay, all right, let's see what... Hey, here we go. We got a live one here, guys. All right, look at that. Oh, got me off track here. I was going to say, here it is. You ought to write this down. This one's really good. All anger is a response. Here it comes now. Pay attention. To a perceived. What do you suppose the next word's going to be? Threat. Very good. Very good. We use this, and if you read any of my books on counseling, is that right? Am I spelling that right? Threat? Yep. Sometimes I get up to this board and I look at it, and that doesn't look right. We use this as a psychological law in our counseling, and it's very productive for us. Because first of all, if this is true, and we've proven, I've proven it so many times, all my books and stuff on counseling have this in there because it's so effective. But a lot of people don't believe in this. Because what this says then is, I'm responsible for my emotions. Let me give you a good text for that. Not only Ephesians 4:26 and 27, but James 1:19. Be slow to speak, quick to hear. What's the other one? Slow to anger. Oh, does that mean I can control it? Does that mean I can control it? Yes, it does, doesn't it? And that's what Paul's saying. Don't let the sun go down on your anger. That means you've got some control over it. Well, let me add another one to it. You have a lot more control over it than you realize. But we are in a society today that doesn't want to take responsibility. It's too easy to blame the weather, to blame God, to blame our kids, to blame our husband, to blame our wife. And so, when you say, I got angry today, or my husband made me angry today, I just couldn't help it. It's probably a lie. In fact, I'm telling you, it is a lie. Because all emotions are a choice. Now you say, oh, but I couldn't help it at the moment I got it. Yes, some of us express anger more than others. Some of us are quick boilers, okay? I understand that, it's temperament. What I'm simply saying is, you've made a choice somewhere along the line to get angry in certain situations because they're a threat to your self-esteem. Now, there are two kinds of threats. One is a real threat, okay? Hungry tigers chasing you down the street, guess what? Is that imaginary? No. For some people, they have imaginary beliefs like that, but anyway. The real threat is when I am feeling that I'm going to get killed or somebody's going to do bodily harm to me or whatever, I'm getting fired. Some of those things are real threats. But I would tell you that I believe that probably 80% of most threats we perceive are imaginary. And they're a threat to our self-esteem and our well-being. And so therefore, we usually have some areas that we're deficient on as far as our self-esteem, our self-worth, or what have you. Psychologists call it self-concept. So, the biggest thing that we have to think about in our life, and we do think about in our life, is in this self-concept business, is how do I see my world? How does my world see me? Okay? That's what we really think about a lot in our life. In our world, how do I see my world? How does my world see me? And so, if I think my world is an enemy out there because they're always going to see me with my flaws and my warts and all that kind of business, then I'm going to have a lot of threats in my brain cells, okay? Because this is basically having to do with programming the brain. Now I'm going to get off Moses a little bit.